he's a bunch. He's got many hats, but they generally all have a cannabis picture on them, and that's because he's from Martin's World. Martin's World. Martin, you haven't got your cape on tonight, but how you doing?
Got my cap, actually. Now that you just said that, I forgot my cap at Martin's World.
There you go. Losing the branding opportunity here. And yeah, so you're doing all right, man, are you?
Jumper's on 3 years old, apparently, this jumper, as I got it at the start of the show, and the show turned 3 today. So
there you go. Look at
that.
Well, your document.
Get up there, like, look at that. Not as
it looks faded, man, to be honest.
It looks 3 years old, doesn't it?
It's a great brand, and to be honest, it's become synonymous with Irish cannabis activism, and there's no doubt about it, man. You really nailed the space. I think you even won an award one year, didn't you? You won a cannabis.
Yeah, that's right. Mike Wise does a yearly cannabis activist award, and there was a lot of support there from the community, and they got me a nomination and a win for Cannabis Activist of the Year. Global Cannabis Activist of the Year, actually.
Well, from what I know, man, it's completely deserved. You put an awful lot of energy into it, and your activism has no, there's nobody paying you a bunch of money. There's no people bankrolling, unlike what these CRA, Cannabis Risk Alliance, and these other people would claim. It's all bullshit. This is we're activists, and we're doing this largely off our own bat. So the thing is, I've been coming lately from a very kind of patient-centric sense, and that's why I'm really interested in yourself, because while I know Martin Condon, the activist, and Martin's World and everything about him, I love your show. Your show has been on a sabbatical.
Yeah,
He's been producing babies, man. I can't get over it. He's had 2 babies in 3 years. This is the 3-year break. So, in fairness, man, it's a good enough reason to kind of take your sabbatical. So, and there's now a pandemic in there as well. So, what did you miss?
Not a whole lot, I'd say.
But fair play, and congratulations on all the children, on the family, and it's amazing to keep everything moving together. And you're totally entitled to a little break. And for other people or other viewers out there, he's back, and he's going to be back, and I imagine a couple of times a week, like he was on YouTube. Is that going to be the case?
Yeah, I don't think I'll get up to the old speed of 3 shows a week. That was back in the early days. There was Monday, Wednesday, Friday we used to stream, but at the aim now at the moment is get at least 1 stream a week. If we can get 2, that's a bonus. And I get some interviews in on top of that then as well, because there's some amazing people, as you very well know, out there with some amazing stories to tell as well. So I would like to get back in there and enjoying yourself and showcasing those stories, help amplifying those voices, because there's a lot of people out there who would benefit out of that as well, because they're these people who share their stories, much like I will with yourself. There's others.
We all want you back, man. There's no doubt about it. And the fact is, what you do is you're kind of on Martin's World, you're putting out the kind of the news. It's a news program. It's a valid news program. It's like every day you used to check in. Sometimes it'd be depressing because it's constant. There'd be too much.
That was the hardest part of the 420 news, is that there was very little positives to cover, because you're always just dealing with grow house raided, cannabis seized, person dragged to court. There was very little
prohibition. The fruits of prohibition. I mean, shocking.
Yeah, you try to add a bit of humor into it, but you kind of it's like it's not something that's easy to joke about either, really, because there's a person behind a lot of these cases getting dragged through the courts. Yeah, somebody has to do it.
So tonight, Martin, I want to get a little bit behind the cape, to the man behind the cape. So because I've dealt a little bit with the kind of pediatric epilepsy and epilepsy in kids and stuff, but you're somebody with adult epilepsy, and this doesn't get covered, man. And people, it's kind of hidden away behind your activism and all of that, your front and your cape and all the rest of it. And I'm wondering, tell us a little bit about your journey. I hate that word, but that's what they use. Your journey with epilepsy. When did it first manifest?
Yeah, I suppose it was something I was born with, actually. I was born with epilepsy, born having seizures. Mum and Dad actually didn't think they were going to be able to bring me home out of the hospital. They were told, expect the worst. It was quite bad at the time. But luckily enough, medication proved positive for myself, and they were managed to get my seizures under control. So much so that when I reached the age of just before my second birthday, I believe they started weaning me off the medication that I was on, because I think I'd gone over a year without seizures. So that this medication, they knew that had they kept me on it, it wasn't going to be beneficial for me, especially my small developing body. And as the seizures were under control, it weren't happening now. They thought it would have been beneficial to take me off the medication, and it was. I went seizure free from being a couple of months old to the age of 2014. So it would have been 25, I suppose, 24, 25, give or take. And yeah, that's when the seizures would have returned. I didn't actually get a diagnosis then of epilepsy until November of last year or the year before. Jeez, can't even remember now. It's been a blur.
Last year.
Yeah, November of last year. That's when I actually got my official diagnosis, I believe. Was it? Or was it the previous November? Jesus, it's all blurry, I'm just thinking that the last seizure I had was, no, it was November the year before. That's right. It was April of the year last year that I had my last seizure. So it would have been November then the previous year that I got my diagnosis to that. So it took them quite a while, because they were, my dad suffered a heart attack at the age of 38. His dad died of a heart attack at the age of 55. So they were like very much focused on my cardiac system, like my heart and stuff like that. So they were putting it down to being vasovagal, which is kind of to do with blood pressure. And that I was passing out. I wasn't having seizures. So that was somewhat reassuring in one sense, because I was like, all right, at least I'm not having seizures, and this kind of vasovagal thing, we were trying to figure something out there. But actually it turned out in the end that it was seizures. So while they were trying to figure out how to treat the vasovagal thing for like 2 or 3 years, I was still having seizures, and amongst all that, the frequency of the seizures actually increased during that time.
And you can be without a diagnosis, is what you're saying. You can still be having seizures and still not, and be without the diagnosis.
Yeah. So the first seizure I had was back in 2014, and it coincided, actually, funny enough, and I believe it has a lot to do with it. With my release from Cork prison. I was after being held in Cork prison for 5 days. I was after being held in the holding cell in the Mayfield Garda station for a night as well. So there would have been 6 nights in total, 5 days that I was taken away, held as a prisoner for my use of cannabis. I would have been dragged in after the guards were looking for me for over 3 years on a bench warrant, because I just stopped showing up to court. I got a bit disenfranchised with the whole system. I felt like the whole thing was just rigged, and there was no hope to actually engage with it to get justice. I felt like I was completely unjustified in everything that went on. And I just said, I'm not going in there anymore. Because I spoke to one of the judges, and I said, hey, judge, I don't feel like I've done anything wrong, and to punish me is only to be making me a victim. And I've done nothing wrong. Show me my victim in this court. I'm the only victim I see here. And he didn't want to get engaged with that at all. Gave me the usual, that gave me a fine, a conviction, and I didn't pay the fine. And I stopped showing up to further court cases after that, and kind of interaction with the judge. So they caught up with me, brought me to the holding cell, ended up going to court, sentenced to 2 months in prison, and I done 5 days of it. I was out then on temporary release for the remainder of the sentence. So they made me do temporary release for 6 weeks.
The holding cell experience was what, for just one night, or
the cell in the Mayfield was one night. So they take what was happening was I was at home one evening, was making, I never forget this, I was actually poaching some cod in a bit of milk. I was going to be making a fish pie for my myself and my daughter. And I looked, and there was a knock at the door, and I looked, and there was 2 guards standing there, and they just knew by the look on my face. Like, I was after fobbing off the guards now many times before this, told them I was my brother and stuff like this, and this time there was no getting away with it. Like, they were like, Martin Condon, we've an arrest warrant there for yourself. You have to come to the station with us. You have to go to court tomorrow. I was there cooking, as I said, for myself and my daughter. Like, my daughter was there with me. My parents were there as well. Like, it was a bit of it was a very upsetting situation for everybody involved as well. My daughter at the time was probably only 3, I think, or 4. So quite young, like, and very upsetting to be seeing her dad getting taken away by these two guards.
Oh, massive trauma, man.
Yeah. And myself then that evening, like I attempted suicide and everything inside in the cell, like just trying to strangle myself with my socks. That's all they left me with. And yeah, I'd done a bit of damage to myself as well, fucking hitting the wall and things like that, because you're inside in a concrete room behind a steel door. It's very dehumanizing, the whole thing. And for what? Because cannabis, it's, as I said, it's unjustified. There's no justifying it at all. And as I was saying, the 2-month sentence, I only done 5 days of it in prison, and then I had to do the remainder of it on temporary release. Temporary release, I basically had to go to the Garda station every single day and sign a book stating that I'm still in the area, that I haven't left the area. I had to obey a curfew and things like that. But one evening, after about 2 weeks of this, I missed the that day. I think I was after going to the park. I was after doing something with the family that day, and I normally do it at a certain time, but was just distracted. And I was lying in bed later that evening, and I realized, oh shit, I didn't sign on today. And it was gone 12 o'clock and all at that stage. So I couldn't. I wasn't supposed to be able to sign on. So I just got on to the guards at the Garda station, and she was nice enough to let me come up and actually sign the book after the hour. Sorry, no, just wrestling somebody here at the door. Well, she actually let me come up there after the hour. Apologies for that. To sign the book. But I went home that evening after that. It was about like 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning, lying in bed after signing the book and stuff. And my girlfriend thought like I was trying to strangle her or something. I went stiff in the bed. My arms flailed out to the side. So she didn't know what was going on. I kind of came back through, and she was like, "Martin, what took?" Like, she goes, "Are you trying to strangle me or what?" She goes, "I think you just had a seizure or something." And I didn't know what was going on. I didn't even notice something was after happening to me. I was just after waking up. But it didn't really work out too well. Oops, let's close that because somebody's having a bit of a heart attack out there. But I had a seizure in the bed that night. Went to the hospital, presented myself the very next day. Done all sorts of brain scans and things like that, and they couldn't see any obvious signs of seizures. So that's kind of why I went on then for so long around it, because I didn't have my next seizure then again until 2020. So there was like another 6-year period there where I didn't have any. And then
were you on like drug in the meantime, or like
no, I hadn't been prescribed anything in the meantime at all. The problem seemed to have gone away, so it wasn't really an issue, I suppose, there at that time. As I said, they checked out, done the brain scans the next day at the hospital, and they didn't see anything obvious signs of seizures. Normally they'd see kind of brain signals there that would indicate a seizure had happened, but there was nothing like that there. So I probably had some sort of a mild seizure. I'm not too sure really the nature of it. It wasn't like the ones I started having in 2020. 2020 were way worse seizures, brought on vomiting, profuse sweating, absolutely horrible. Some of the stuff that absolutely that went.
Can you relate that to an event when they came on in 2020? Is that?
Yeah. 2019 got stopped with a joint while I was at work. I was working delivering Chinese. Pulled in alongside this shop to do it. To go into the shop actually to get some water before I went to do the deliveries. So I had delivery bags up in the thing, and next squad car pulls in alongside me. It was like, "Oh, we're going searching your car." I didn't even like say anything, just literally, "We're going searching your car under misuse of drugs." I was like, "What the hell is going on there?" Apparently I pulled in outside a drug dealer's house, but I didn't notice at all. I'd pulled in outside the shop that I was going in to get my phone out of, and I was going on doing my deliveries, continuing the same way. But they searched the car. I didn't realize then there was a joint in the ashtray. It was like a ready-made, but it wasn't after even being smoked or anything. I'd brought it with me to poker, but didn't get around to smoking it at all because I probably had more than what I needed. I probably had a few other ready-mades there, and that was just the leftovers from the night, and I forgot about it. And yeah, that was it. Like that led into like 2 weeks later. It was Easter Sunday. I was going to a dog show with the family. And next I got stopped and searched again, and they ripped the whole family out of the car, searched the side of the road. So it was a whole ordeal around it. And then come early 2020.
I want to just get that image. So they've
I can
How
give you
many
an image
cops?
for that
How
as
many,
well.
yeah, how many cops are there? Like they pulled you over. There's
Yeah, there was 4 cops there at a checkpoint. It was a main road checkpoint, so they were just checking for tax and insurance, from my understanding.
right.
I had all of this. There was no reason to pull me in for further inspection except
And
probably
you've got the family, your missus and one of the kids, and
two kids, 2 dogs, and herself. Yeah, so myself and herself in the front, the 2 kids and the 2 dogs in the back, and
all have to get out.
all had to get out of the car while 2 guards then searched the car at the side of the road on a busy Sunday
Daytime
morning.
on a Sunday morning.
Easter Sunday morning. So, and it's on the main road as well, one of the main arteries into and out of the city, from the east side of the city. So there was an awful lot of traffic, and it was on an approach to a roundabout too. So the traffic is slowing down, and it's kind of backing
You
up.
are a
Point
spectacle.
two.
You're the
Spectacle, me and
spectacle
my
on the.
family, the whole lot of us at the side of the road,
That's shocking,
everybody
man.
bottlenecking looking. And it's shocking. It was degrading. And if
Yeah,
that's how I felt,
believe
I
it.
can only imagine how my kids felt. I know afterwards driving down that road that there was a couple of distasteful words expressed from the kids about the cops and stuff, which I don't really like that either. I don't want my kids growing up to be like disenfranchised with authority. I want them to see the guards as being there for their protection, and that's what they should be there for. But while they're out there enforcing these kind of drug laws and treating people like me as a criminal, it's to nobody's benefit, really. Um, but that interaction, I suppose, that initial joint led to that second search, putting us all through that trauma. Then it led to a further court case, and that was when the seizures then came. Is when the summons came for the court case. It just brought on anxiety, sleepless nights. So I would suffer again with a lack of sleep, getting freaking nightmares and things, waking up with anxiety in the morning.
Yeah.
So it was just a repetitive thing of just the body under constant stress, and just probably just led to one day the brain just couldn't have enough, and bang, seizures kind of reactivated. And just since then it kind of escalated until, as I said, April now of last year. I've been thankfully seizure free now after a horrible 2 years of it.
And is that been your self-medicating that you put down to becoming seizure free again, or like what?
I would definitely associate it to it, but I can't really prove it as such. It's the only medication I'm using at the moment. They tried me on 3 different medications. One of them, Keppra, actually left me like in a state of almost psychosis. I was like experiencing flash rage. Like, just you could look at me wrong, and next time up to 90 and want to strangle you. And you might have only just looked at me wrong, and you might have even looked at me wrong at all. You might have just looked at me,
Yeah.
and flash anger would kick in. It was a weird experience. I was on that drug for about 2 weeks, and I had to take myself straight off it. And keep in mind, each of these drugs that I come off of, they can actually have an effect of bring on seizures as a part of like the drug clearing out of your system.
Sure.
They had me on Tegretol, which was another drug. I tolerated that one okay-ish. There was certain side effects, but I was still having breakthrough seizures. There was another one as well. They put me on Vitmax or something like that. It was giving me a bit of issues around eating. Anytime I would eat, feel very nauseous. So it wasn't very good. And again, still having breakthrough seizures on that medication. So I decided then that I was going to go like full on self-medicating, because I suppose previous to this, my consumption of cannabis would have been mostly in the evening, or if I was to have coffee in the morning, I would probably couple that with a bit of cannabis too. But otherwise, I was mostly an evening smoker, unwinding in the evening, and not even in every evening. But since the seizures then and stuff, I decided, look, it's going to be a daily thing. I'm going to make sure that I keep this system topped up to a certain level, and maintain that. And that's what I intend to do. And as
Can we talk a bit? Can we talk a little bit about that? So, in
Mm.
terms of your treatment of your self-treatment with cannabis, so in terms of like, how did you first come to? I mean, you're obviously very wide, and you know lots, you know where to find cannabis, you know where cannabis is, you know all of that. I mean, but did you kind of, was it an exploratory thing to discover a certain strain, or was what, like, I mean, how did you get into finding the cannabis that worked for you is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I suppose you don't have a lot of choice really in this. But given my own background, you know, the herbal science, I knew that there was a lot of evidence there around, say, THC, CBD, and other cannabinoids, even just the primary cannabinoids, and without going into some of the more complex things around the terpenes and synergies and stuff like that, just focusing primarily on the cannabinoids, there was certainly a lot there. So I just maintain getting in enough THC, and couple that with a CBD then as well. And that's not too hard to do when I'm only just focusing in on those two
Cannabinoids.
yeah, those two cannabinoids. CBD, as you know, it's abundantly available, and THC then it's something that's, you know, you can procure it. It's
Would you
not
target what I was kind of getting towards is that would you kind of target a weed that's very CBD heavy for is that
no I normally
no?
just would focus in on different strains based on their THC content. I would
Right,
be
THC is what's working for you.
Yeah, THC is what's working for me, but as I say, I couple that then with the CBD, so I make sure to just get in a couple of drops of CBD as a supplement on top of the THC sources, and that's proven to be effective since last April. So that THC then intake, it comes in two different forms. So I'll take some capsules in the morning, THC oil with a bit of coconut oil in a capsule, and then throughout the day we'll dose up with some flower, either vaped or from the bong.
My point is that it's such a demonized cannabinoid when it shouldn't. You know, this is for me with my MS. I have chronic pain. I've got neuropathic pain, and for me, the THC is the analgesic. I've been through a lot of strains to try and find the things that works for me. Sure, a good CBD. But high THC CBD strain is what works for me in terms of controlling my neuropathic pain and ensuring a good night's sleep and all those things. You find your balance in the end.
Yeah, well, that's one thing I suppose that worries me at the moment is I hope I don't find that I need specific balances, that I hope this crude approach that I'm taking currently is going to be effective enough. As it is rather crude, you know, I wish there was a case where I could be going in and getting a regimented dose where I know exactly what it is that I'm taking, but because of the nature of the environment there, like where we're getting THC, you're never assured as to how much is actually in it. You know, say the oils that are used for making the pills or the flour that's put into the vape and the bong, it can vary. Even within batches, you know, you can get some flowers that are like premium flour, like, and then sometimes in the bag you might get some of the lower thirds of the plant, and they're not as premium. You know, there's going to be less of a cannabinoid content in those flowers, so you're dealing with all of that. So I really hope I don't have a day where my seizures do break back through. Because then I'm going to be questioning, is it that the cannabinoids aren't working now, or do we need more? You know, you just don't know. But again, I just wish I was working with a professional in this, and not kind of shooting in the dark at the moment, or taking a cowboy approach. Really, I'm not a health
But
professional.
ultimately, that's the thing, Martin, isn't it? You know what I mean? It's the fact that you are shooting in the dark a little bit when you don't have kind of access. You should have access to a social club. You should have access to you know, different streams of where you could access proper weed and know exactly what's in what and all
That
that.
access is there, unfortunately, but it's just not afforded to me because of the way in which the medical cannabis access program was put into place there. My consultant can keep prescribing me different drugs as long as he kind of wants to, because it's within the framework of the medical cannabis access program. So it's basically I have to try all of the available medications there before I meet the criteria of
Have you tried what's available on the access program? Have you tried any of the flowers? The Vedrocan
Oh, I've
and
tried some of the Bedrocan. Some of the other patients there have allowed me to sample some of the flour that was sent over from by Bedrocan, and I was quite impressed actually. I thought it was fine. I know there's a lot of criticism there because of the whole radiation thing, but I know there's no this issue. I thought it was quite fine.
right for you
Yeah, but I
treating.
suppose the thing I'd be more interested in getting access to would be the oils that are there under the medical cannabis access program. As I go back to say, like in terms of consistent dosing, I'd like to be getting a product where I know that there's certain amount of milligrams in there, and that I'm taking that amount every day and I'm maintaining a certain level within my own system in order to keep the seizures at bay. Whereas at the moment, I think there's a lot of fluctuation within my system, whereas some days I could have a bit more in my system, cannabinoids in my system, and the next day, again, because of the inconsistency in the flower, I can have a bit
Sure.
less. And
How do you advise people? Because my feeling is that I wanted to try and get this out to people with epilepsy, and this is the idea, because we've done the thing with pediatric epilepsy. It's the one that pulls the heartstrings and gets the headlines and all that kind of thing. But I honestly think that adult epilepsy, there's a ton of people out there who don't really, for this is just such an area they know nothing about. And that's why I kind of wanted to pick your brain, because you have an amazing brain. You're a plant scientist, you're all of the things, and you've got so much history around this. And so, I mean, how would you, if somebody came to you and said, I've got epilepsy, Martin, what should I do? What kind of weed should I, you know?
yeah, I suppose my advice to anybody who hasn't tried cannabis before, who suffers with epilepsy and would be interested in it, would be looking for a variety that's probably going to be more higher in CBD than THC initially. THC is something that you have to work up a tolerance within your system for, because of some of those psychoactive effects. If you dive right into the deep end with, say, some of the strains that I would be using with a higher THC there, and you don't have a tolerance there to it can be a bit of a daunting experience and an unpleasant experience. And I wouldn't want anybody to be experiencing that with any medication. And again, if you're an epilepsy sufferer, then you're going to be familiar with having to titrate up your doses anyway. Most epilepsy drugs, they're powerful drugs, and your body has to build up a tolerance to it. So they start you in 50 milligrams for 2 weeks, 100 milligrams for another 2 weeks, 100, 200, stepping up. The same could be said for cannabis, but for probably different reasons, the psychoactive effects there. You need to build up a tolerance to that so that you're just not overwhelmed by some of the, I suppose, what would you say, the
Side
paranoia,
effects
the
is what they.
heightened anxiety, and yeah, the side effects, exactly. Yeah.
But
But
that's right.
that would be my advice. It would be that be looking for one of these strains that are higher in CBD and lower in THC, and then working your way up. If that's the way you're looking to go for it, through, say, the flower vaporized method. Otherwise, if you're looking at the oils, then you've got a lot more of a selection out there. But again, I'd be looking for a higher ratio of CBD to THC initially, and working to find your balance there in that. Probably looking to work it up to a 1-to-1 or a 2-to-1 THC to CBD. That would be what I would be probably aiming for myself.
Perfect. And have you tried what's out there, the Sativex and the Epidiolex? There's something that you're aware of?
Sativex is a THC based one that's out there. This has been available on the Irish market for a long time, but nobody prescribes it. I think it's like 500 quid for a month's worth of it or something like that.
Right, I heard that.
Yeah, that's
It's 1-to-1 though, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a 1-to-1. It's something it's something like that. As a 1-to-1 THC to CBD or something along those lines. But it's an oral spray, and I think it's actually for the multiple sclerosis patients, was it not? Initially, it's supposed to be prescribed for those. Epidiolex then was developed for epilepsy patients, around the whole, say, Charlotte's Web story and all of that stuff that was kind of there. The GW Pharmaceuticals seen their opportunity, and they started putting the groundwork in, getting it approved through the FDA in the US. They actually have it approved there. They've done clinical trials on it as well. So that's their kind of CBD oil. I'm not too sure of the ratio that Epidiolex is, but I know it is a CBD. Is the
thing that I found quite shocking, just to cut across you, Martin, the health committee, and you had that guy, the one consultant, epilepsy consultant, who was on that committee, and he said he'll never prescribe it anyway. And it just felt so undermining, right? You've all of this work going into creating this drug and all this investment and all this, and this is the one that's FDA accepted. This is everything, and you're saying you just want to prescribe it anyway.
Yeah, so some of the doctors or the health professionals out there, if you would call them that, would liken cannabis medicines to fucking crystals. Like one of them is on record in our government's building, like, and saying that, and I sat beside him as he was saying it. I couldn't believe it at all. I was shocked. But he likened the use of medical cannabis to the use of crystals for healing. It's,
You know,
he's a health professional.
yeah, but I think it's just, is it a case of they just don't learn it in school, so they just don't accept it? I mean, they're not learning this
That's a big part of it. Like, I done herbal science myself, and I had to go and self-learn the endocannabinoid system. But in our pharmacology class, guess what system they taught us? The opioid system. No
Okay.
problem, we're all teaching us the opioid system, but when it came to the endocannabinoid system, I wasn't a part of the syllabus. I went and done it as a choice project in the pharmacology when I looked at the pharmacology of cannabis, and specifically for epilepsy, the mechanisms of actions there. When you,
I had to say I was so impressed with you, Martin. And in that health committee, there was a politician, I forget his name, but he was talking about, he wanted to kind of, in fairness to him, he wanted to explore the idea of plant medicine. And so you had all those people, and you had the guy, the non-prescribing non-prescribing epileptic doctor, and this bunch of people around on that committee. And then your man was asking, he was probing about plant medicine, and then you were able to kind of step in and go, well, hold on. And then because you were the only person in the room that knew really knew anything about anything when it came to what you were talking about in plant medicine and ECS and all these things. And it is because there's a real lack of knowledge out there. You meet it all the time, or when you meet it as like so blatantly, it's just it's almost like banging your head against the wall going,
well, I'm not surprised that there is, to be very honest. As I said, I done herbal science, and anytime I chose to do a project to investigate the medical benefits of cannabis, I was ostracized, stigmatized, by my lecturers, by my supervisors, within that. They should have been supportive of it. One of them actually asked me, is this really what you want to do, Martin? You're doing a lot of projects on cannabis, and it mightn't look good in your CV. What am I supposed to say to somebody who rings me, oh, this is the fellow who does cannabis projects? I was shocked when he said it to me. And I was just about to say his name, but I won't say his name. But I was just like, you obviously don't know me, and you don't realize my passion behind this and where this industry is going to go. And this fella was like a smart person as well, Particular fella actually was very big into his whole wine thing, and he was very big into the whole flavonoids and that side of wine. I was like, yeah, this has all of this too and more. It's like, why aren't you so into that?
You go past that in Barcelona, where I am here, obviously. Barcelona has a college devoted, like a UPC. I forget the technical. It's a polytechnic, but it's completely devoted to cannabis and the study of hemp and the cannabis plant and everything around it. So while I've been through the Innovation Academy in UCD, and I've been through the Innovation Academy called the Tangent in Trinity, and I'm at that. I was at a talk there this summer in Barcelona, and they had like 5 fully grown plants on the stage. I couldn't get over it, but the one lady that came out, and she's a very interesting lady, Viola Brugnatelli. She's in Italian. And so I spoke with her afterwards, and the one thing that really struck me was when she came out on the stage, she announced her presentation, which was about she's a scientist, and she's deep studies of CBD and effects of CBD and different things. And so she, but then I spoke with her afterwards, and she said, I've just come from Ireland. And I said, really? Yeah. She said, I was in UCD for the last 6 months. And I went, wow. And she said, yeah, she said, she couldn't study CBD in UCD. Now, some kind of, I don't know, some quantum leap has happened up at UCD, because I interviewed a guy called Manny this year from the SSDP, the UCD SSDP, and he's actually in a group that's studying psilocybin, like studying PTSD for the effects of psilocybin on PTSD patients. And but Viola, she said that she couldn't bring in any flower, she couldn't study anything. This is a scientist, and you go, really? And that's only, so she was here. That was only a year and a half ago or something like that. It's like, I mean, it's The first thing she announced on her presentation was that it's amazing to be here within this space. That's an educational space. This is a university, and so she was just delighted. This is where it should exist. This is where our research should exist. This is where our academia should exist. It's here, you know, in our institutions. And so Barcelona is allowing, beyond the social clubs and all the noise and Spanibus and all that noise, there is this other layer to absolute academic research that goes on here, and it is very really exciting. And you have people like Viola that is really, you know, gets her space here, and we are denying these people.
Yeah, and they're denying them for a long time, to be fair. I know we met one of the researchers, actually, funny enough, from was he from the Canaries? I think he might have done research out of the University of Madrid, Dr. Moses Garcia Abernankia. But I'll always remember what he said, and I was shocked as well by it at the time. But the research they were doing over there at the time, anytime they'd done clinical studies, they would get the worst of all the patients over there. So you'd have different grades of patients. A newly diagnosed patient who hasn't been prescribed any medication being the grade A patient for a clinical study. And then a grade F patient, the worst of all the patients, would be a patient who's tried all of the drugs and who's got a chronic condition that's only progressing and getting worse. He said anytime he done cannabis, it was grade F all the time they would get. And he done one study on Alzheimer's patients with a group of patients that were like all on a decline. They were all getting like progressing worse into their condition, into their disease with Alzheimer's. And he tried them on a cannabis-based medication, and he didn't get anybody better. He said, I'm not going to claim I made anybody better. He said, they did not get worse. Yeah, then the markers, they didn't decline any further. They plateaued. So he couldn't make them better, but he didn't. In
progressive diseases.
And what he says, if he could do that for the people who were on that downward trajectory, who had nothing else worked for them, said, what could I do for the grade A patients who were just newly diagnosed? You know, the Abigails. You know,
the Abigails. There you go. You took the words right out of my mouth, man.
You know, that's real. Like, and that's blood on the hand of all these people out there that support this prohibition. And this is why I get so impassioned about this, because you see the knock-on consequences of this prohibition, you know, and it's for what there's kids out there selling the drugs now. Like, these are the ones we're supposed to be protecting, and meanwhile the researchers can't even do the fucking research because of this. It's a double-edged sword, this prohibition, and it's getting society on both sides.
Very quickly, because we're moving through the time, you paid a little bit, you've scratched the surface with the Citizens Assembly. I think I'm very positive that it has to have something in it. Otherwise, you know.
I was saying earlier, I'm very optimistic as to the citizens that of the City Assembly have been a bit disenfranchised with some of the panels, but I'm very optimistic as to the outcome. I think decriminalization is going to be almost guaranteed. I do believe they'll probably address as well the drug supply issue around regulation of certain drugs. I know cannabis has come up an awful lot, and despite the best efforts of Chris Luke, I think there will still be a lot of support there from the citizens to a regulated cannabis market too. And they haven't even talked really about medical cannabis there within the Citizens Assembly, but I'd imagine if that is to come up at some point, that's going to be a unanimous support across the citizens at the Assembly. And hopefully it does come up, because I hope there is a recommendation there for patients too, in terms of recommendations from the citizens, because the medical cannabis access program is just not fit for purpose currently. And as you very well,
I'm out here, Alicia is down in Alicante. There's people like I'm here, Alicia is there, but we know people all over these areas, and even Holland and even the UK. You know, there's people living in the UK because you can actually access through the private space in the UK. So it's I mean, there's so much work to be done with Ireland. Martin, I'm going to have you back. You know, we'll let this. I'm going to wait till this Citizens Assembly, because you're amazing knowledge on the thing, and you also have this genuine patient experience, and I really wanted to get to that in this call today, and that's really what I want to get. But we'll come back further down the Citizens Assembly, and there's a good few weekends to come yet. You know, there's maybe 4 or 6, I think.
4 more left, so it's going to wrap up in October. So we've got 4 more months of it.
Yeah,
And the recommendations then.
I think that people though are getting more and more kind of engaged with it each time. Each time it comes around, and it becomes I mean, it's getting in the press that it never used to do, and it's getting into corners of press that it never used to. And so this is it. It's here now. It's a kind of grown up conversation, the way that our conservative voters like to digest these things. The big issue is still for me is the doctors. And, I found out my doctor's on the CRA, the Cannabis Risk Alliance, and I'm going to be having words with him about that. But it's that kind of thing. The barriers are still there, but we can only keep plugging away. Man, you do an amazing job. I'm going to wrap it there, Martin. Yeah, and you keep doing what you're doing, and we all got to go over and subscribe to Martin's World. He's back up and running, and so you got to subscribe to our channels, man. They all need support, and the support comes in likes and subscribes and all that kind of thing. I don't do this button thing, ring the bell and do all of those things, and follow us, man, because it's disillusioning. If we need encouragement, and because everybody's doing this kind of, Martin's got a bunch of kids there. He's making kids to beat the band.
I'm done now after this, Steve, because I'll be hung, drawn, and quartered if any more babies.
Right, well, fair play. Good enough, man. Look, good night, Martin. Thanks very much. And I'll be watching the next 420.
Yeah, appreciate that, Steve, man. Thanks very much for having me on.